the flapping of wings and the pressure of mountain winds. As you find yourself outside, their roars as loud as 1,000 stampeding beasts. You take your family and run. The anxiety and heart-pounding sounds echo through your head. Within seconds, you find yourself in front of the beast, a great horned monster with scales and teeth the size of horses. In your last seconds of life, you feel a burn, unlike anything you've ever felt before. The creature opens its mouth, and within moments, everything you know, burned away with a single breath. Welcome back to the second Mythos episode of A Delve Deeper. I'm your host, Nate, and I'm here with my co-host, Joey. And follow us as we search the files for a deeper understanding, finding, and meaning behind some of the world's greatest mysteries, hauntings, cryptids, and mythos. Come with us as we attempt to take a delve deeper.
Why, of course. How else would we do so? And for anybody that didn't catch that, we're doing... Yes, of course, today's episode is the dragons, wyverns, worms, drakes, and the other various types. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head.
Lungs is the fifth big major one, and then each one of those has smaller breakdowns. It's like a species genus thing.
Ah, I see.
I mean, I'm not like an expert or anything, but I'm kind of a bit of a dragon expert.
I don't think you've even read the dragon books. What were they called?
They're
like those
right now. No.
Yeah, there's like those little dragon books. You're like, oh yes. Which today we're going to be going over the mythos of dragons, and kind of go over the different types that are seen not only within like books and fables, but also in like television, movies, stuff like that. Because there's a ton of them to go over, and I think we'll definitely probably hit on each and every one of them. We're just putting the dragon on the title because everybody knows what a dragon is. So.
Right.
But
big creature goes poof, makes fire.
That's 90% of the time, yes. But the other part of the time, not really. There's some that don't do that at all, actually. But do we want to start off by kind of naming each of these off and kind of going through the list?
Yeah, sure. So, if we go to like the 5 major groups that we just talked about, it's important to note the difference. So the dragon, the basic dragon that everyone thinks of, is large, reptilian-like creature, 4 legs, wings that flies, generally breathes fire. That's a dragon. And then you get to the other variants. The Eastern dragon or the Asian dragon is known as a lung, and those have 4 legs, no wings, but they still fly and usually breathe fire. Wyrms have no legs, no wings, and they usually have more of like a snake-like head. They burrow instead of fly more. Wyverns or wyverns, they have only 2 legs. They don't have the front legs. And they have wings and are also able to fly. And those ones don't, like, half of them seem to breathe fire and half of them don't. And then drakes are 4 legs, and they don't have wings typically, but because they don't fly. So unlike the lung, they're not long and serpent-like. They're usually more bulky, but they're still reptilian, of course. And then baby dragons are referred to as hatchlings, usually, and that's across all these species.
Yeah, and there's like a ton of different variations throughout, not only just European culture, but as you were touching on, like Asian culture, Middle Eastern, and even American culture, and that funky.
Oh yeah, and then there's even some strange ones, like dragons are often referred to as deities, and I know there's like an Aztec one that's Quetzalcoatl is a big one.
Yeah, well then you gotta think of like the Norse is also the Leviathan, which is an underwater dragon. And we've even got, technically the cockatrice is a type of dragon, but interesting.
And if you look at the dragons of the world in the Dragonology book written by published by Candlewick Press, and supposedly written by one Ernest Drake, edited by Dugald A. Steer. Um, but they have a map that says Dragons of the World, and they have stuff broken down to, like, for instance, forest dragons, 2 different types. They have something called a knucker, which is 4 legs and vestigial wings, and then something called a marsupial dragon that literally looks like a kangaroo with wings.
Yeah, there's a couple of them that are pretty strange.
And then they have amphitheater is one that seems to be across a few of them, because there's an Asian amphitheater, an American amphitheater, and even a Mexican amphitheater.
Yes, as I've heard. I mean, you also can't just leave out the salamander, which is just
Right?
a lung with extra steps.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And slimy usually too. Amphitheaters apparently is a classification of dragon that has no legs but has feathery wings. And that makes me wonder how the hell they land.
They don't. They just
What?
never
They
land. I mean, it's like a shark.
just if they land, that means they're dead.
Yeah, but I mean, the shark thing. Yeah. Well, what
I
was
think
it?
it's funny on this Dragons of the World map too. I just want to note it has a whole section on the difference between sea serpents and dragons, and it says how to tell the difference. And the very first one is serpents do not breathe fire, but dragons may breathe fire.
That's the thing is I love the classifications in dragon stuff because it's like what's the difference between something that's similar like I was saying like the sea serpent in Norse mythology, right, which is just a tad different than other ones. I mean, because the Leviathan is pretty much just a worm, but a water worm. And you see the differences between that and a regular worm, and they're like, oh, well, you see, this one lives in the water. Okay.
That's right. Yeah, it's
like
the difference.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, all right, so that's it, huh? And you're like, pretty much, yeah.
Joey, are you telling me that we have a rarely seen creature that is in a bunch of different cultures throughout the world that is commonly associated with fire? Haven't we done this long enough for you to come to the conclusion, like I have, that it's clearly arson bears?
I was gonna say this is the 3rd episode in a row that we've been it's the bears. It's the fucking arson wolves and the arson bears coming together.
That's right.
Creating these images that we physically can't comprehend bears at this point.
Right. All bears, shapeshifters, every one of them.
Every single bear, they are in need of licensed therapy for their arsony.
All I'm saying is if I ever go to leave my house and there's just a bunch of bears outside my house, I won't be surprised.
The bears are actually the government.
All the Men in Black incidents, it's actually men in bear suits. That's what the B stands for. It was never black.
Yeah. Yeah. If there's ever a sloth of bears outside, I'm gonna freak out.
Remember these moments.
Let's see. I kind of want to talk on the actual individuals of the dragons. I think the dragon itself is the perfect place to start on where I think we should kind of describe exactly what their powers, and I kind of want to put them on a tier list today. I think today on the Mythos file, I'm going to tier list all these dragons with you, and we're going to put them in the top 10 and see which one we like the best.
Well, I'm gonna bust out my good old notebook, so if you hear some paper, that's
that just is the sound of progress, my friend.
That's right. And I already have a pen, so you said we're gonna make a top 10?
Yeah. I know there's more than 10 people, but I'm gonna just say let's let's just
There
go
was
ahead.
there was a mobile game that became a computer game called Dragon City that had like 6,000 or some shit like that. So I mean,
Oh my god.
I'm sure that's an exaggerated number, but it was a lot. It always seems like they're adding more to it still to this day. Every once in a while, I go back and look, and I'm like, oh, it's just too much.
It's fair. It's fair, man. I mean, there's like a lot. I mean, there's one. I know it's like standard Western dragon, Oriental dragon, and it's like African dragon. You're like, what the fuck do you mean? If it's got the word dragon in it, we're counting it as dragon.
Oh man, does that mean we're also counting every individual dragon from Dungeons and Dragons?
I assume so, since they're not really that different in terms of power set. They just have a different type. That's it.
Yeah, so so there is like black, red, blue, white, all of that, and then there's also metallic, which is copper, bronze, and all of that. And like you said, in Dungeons and Dragons, the only difference is what they breathe as their weapon. They don't all breathe fire. Some breathe electricity. Some breathe acid, etc., etc.
If you played Skyrim, that's a dragon. That's exactly what a dragon is. If you've seen one before, I guarantee you've probably seen a dragon picture. Either if you watch movies or maybe you're a
Played
D&D nerd.
Pokemon.
Yeah, even if you're playing Pokemon and you have no idea what a dragon is, there's dragon type. There's all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely affected our culture. But so which one you said we're gonna do a tier list, so which one are we talking about first today? Do you want to start with Eastern or Western?
I think let's go ahead and start with the classic Western, because I feel like that's generally everybody's initial thought when they come up with dragons.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alright, let's see. So, I'm going to kind of sit and describe what a Western dragon looks like. And these are the common ones that you see in a lot of our culture, such as D&D, as movies. Aragon, I think is
Aragon,
that. Yeah, that series. You'll see them in
Dragonheart. That was an amazing movie.
absolutely,
trilogy,
yeah, like tons of different tons of media. And that's the basic dragon, where it's got 4 legs, it's got a pair of wings, and it's got the big old tail, it's scaly, it's got those big horns on the top of it, and it typically spews flame.
And that's something interesting too, is there's the typical Western dragon isn't always depicted with horns, but even when it is, the horns can vary pretty wildly.
Yeah. I mean, they go from like, from what I know, they're straight edged from the skull shape, or they can be like curled like a goat, stuff like that. Like, they can vary heavily depending on what person is kind of influenced by them.
Right. And then they can have influence over people. I mean, obviously, like how much we said they were in culture, but like even back then, it was, tales of heroes slaying dragons have been around since medieval times, and even before then. And so they've always been some kind of influence on people. It's not always bad. They're not always evil monsters.
Yeah, and there is one thing too that also depicts for dragons is what was it? They're hoarders. They
yes,
tend to gather shiny bits and put them together, which comes from those same stories of people killing and destroying dragons. Then they would go into their caves and find massive amounts of gold and treasures, as like there's, like the dragon's
reward
hoard.
basically for beating a dragon.
Loot. They're loot.
Loot. Yeah, I bet you drop basic loot. No.
Yeah, we're getting for real, but yeah, that's typically what the Western dragons are, and I think these personally are a fan favorite of mine. They're the most depicted dragon probably in the
Of
world
all
when it
time.
comes to, media and everything else. And I mean,
It's
they're
the
definitely
combination
one of the top.
of 4 legs that end in claws, with the fire breathing, with the sharp teeth, with the hard scales, with the wings, with the horns. It's all of it together that makes it one of the most intimidating creatures, like we said, in all of media and fiction.
Exactly. And I think just because of that and all the stories that we have and the history and the lore that's come out of it and everything like that, I think honestly, in my opinion, Western Dragons takes a solid 6 on my list personally.
And I would have put it at 5, so I'm good with 6.
Because I think they're good, they're great, but I also think sometimes they've got some stuff that I'm like, okay, like it's your average dragon. There's definitely more interesting ones that I love that come out of different places.
Absolutely. I do like the fact that, like, not only have stories of dragons been around for long times or been around through so many cultures and stuff like that, I do like that old stories called it a hoard, and everyone always depicted that as gold or treasure or something like that. And in the
It could
modern area,
technically be
people were,
anything.
yeah, exactly. In the modern area, it's a common thing for people to be like, if I was a dragon, I would hoard books, or you know what I mean. If I was a dragon, I would hoard, old movies or whatever your hoard may consist of. If you were a dragon, um, I think that's a really cool concept, and when you think about it that way, you can take a lot of those old stories and like add a different like layer to them almost. If you're like, yeah, what if his hoard was just like Playboy magazines, and they're like, I killed the dragon, time to he was a pervert, like
God damn it! There's nothing. Wait, actually, these are worth like $50 a pop. Oh my god! Oh my god! These are vintage,
collector's editions.
gold foil front. Oh my god!
Right. But and that's another thing too is typically they breathe fire and stuff, but it's also said they have like night vision and things like that. So that's makes sense that they choose to go to a cave then, because that's not going to affect the way they see at all.
Yeah.
So I have Western at 6. So basic Western dragon.
Okay, I'll let you choose the next one.
So I think the next one we should go to is probably I would say the second biggest, like pretty up there with the American, is the basic Asian lung. This one is typically depicted as a long serpentine body. It usually also has 4 legs that end in claws, but it has horns. But the difference here is the horns on most Asian lungs are typically depicted to be more like antlers than like horns. So when you think of a Western dragon, you think like goat horns or like devil horns, for lack of a better comparison. But
Yeah.
on these, they're more like antlers, like you would see on a deer or a moose. But these also had one of the strangest depictions of these. So one of the first depictions of an Asian lung from 2700 BC stated this, and this is in quotes. This dragon had deer antlers, a camel's head, a hare's eyes, a serpent's neck, a crocodile's belly, an eagle's claws, tiger's paws, and buffalo's ears. So in 2700 BC, that's the first description of an Asian lung.
I do love the descriptions of certain things because you're like, who the hell came up with this? Who sat
was
down
like-
one night and was like, yeah, I've seen
Yeah.
each of these beasts. I think we're just gonna mash them up. Fuck it.
I think it's funny that's like a serpent's neck, a crocodile's body. Okay, so serpent on serpent, eagle's claws, tiger's paws. That's too much. Too many dangerous things in one appendage. Like I don't.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Buffalo's ears, That's a weird thing to note, Gary. Why are we looking at this thing's ears?
Which is interesting because you do gotta take into part like usually lungs do not have very long legs. They're kind of stumpers.
Yeah, almost. I wouldn't say vestigial, but damn near close. Think like a wiener dog's legs.
I was just gonna say like they're kind of stumpy.
Yeah, or
But if you
corgi
ever gone
legs.
to a Chinese restaurant or anything like that, and they get the dragon with the small legs, that is typically what the lung kind of looks like.
Right.
In
I
terms
just
of
love that the description was like, oh yeah, God had a grab bag full of leftover parts from different animals, and all that came out of it was that thing and the platypus. Like,
they're one and the same to me. I don't know what you're talking about.
all platypuses are Asian lungs. Confirmed.
Guaranteed. The bears told me that one, so you know it's true.
You know it's true.
The one thing I do like about this dragon a lot is that it inhabits both the water and is sometimes seen in mountain areas, which is interesting. So it's either in like the springs around mountains or it's in the water itself.
Yeah, because I believe this is the same dragon too that Gyarados from Pokemon is based off of, which it starts as a goldfish Magikarp, and the story is a koi climbs a mountain fall, yep, waterfall, and turns into this dragon.
Which, if you have played the fantastic game Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice, the
Yes.
Divine Dragon is a lung.
Yeah.
It
So these ones I would say have as much of an impact on Eastern culture as the Western dragons have had on our culture because they're
100%.
so
I mean,
iconic.
in tons of they are used in tons of video games, and even Shenron in Dragon Ball Z is a lung
anime,
dragon.
Kaido in One Piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
like
believe
these
there's
are
even a dragon in Journey to the West, which is like a really old.
Yes. That's that's Sun Wukong, the
Monkey
story of
King.
Sun Wukong. Yeah, really great, and I think all of the myth around them makes them a little bit better, in my opinion, than the Western dragon. I think lung dragons, for me at least, take fourth on my list.
I would have put them at third on mine. But I agree with 4.
I'm good with 3 myself because I think they're high tier 4 compared to a low tier 4. So 3, I'm good with 3 because they just have such a story built around them as well. Like they're cultural. They're usually protectors of something important.
Yeah.
They protect something rather than like hoard a bunch of it. They just protect one very valuable thing. So I just really like their story. I like the way they're designed. I think that the fact that they aren't typically flying, but they can, in some stories, they can fly. They're just way cooler, in my opinion. And even something without wings just feels more, I guess, like mythical than a dragon. I could see being like a dinosaur.
Yeah. I do agree with you. It seems more mythical that way. Also, in like the way they fly without wings, and and there's lots of theories on that. They grab and ride air currents, or like they're just that powerful that their muscles are actually just making them jump really high, and then they're able to use their scales to like bend wind basically to like glide. It's just really long gliding, and like there's tons of theories on how they did it. But also the fact that these dragons typically seeing them, talking to them represented good luck, unlike Western dragons. Western dragons were almost always like it's an evil monster we have to slay. Asian dragons are almost always a sign of good luck. Almost always is the key phrases in both those sentences.
Yeah, they typically tend to be more signs of like a benevolent being.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I think I like them at third place for me because I just feel like they they deserve that love compared to what they've gotten in the past.
Absolutely, 100%. So you go ahead and pick the next one.
The next one I definitely want to go over for sure is something somewhat similar, but I like to go over the Wyrms because I think they're interesting because they're a a dragon without anything, just the the body.
Yeah, exactly. It's so if we take it back to D&D again, purple worms, one of the worst things for a party to fight, but it is basically a worm, like when you get down to it. So when you think of a worm and you think of an earthworm, it's basically that. It's a sentient tube, but one end is a very sharp mouth. And usually sometimes these are the ones that are
Imagine
more
it.
known for spitting acid.
Yeah, I imagine worms kind of similar to the basilisk in like Harry Potter and stuff. Like
Yeah.
it's essentially a giant snake with the head of a dragon, right? And like usually it's venomous or poisonous or has like some form of defensive capability to paralyze its victim, which is very
Yeah.
similar to a basilisk, which some people categorize the basilisk as a worm and some people do not. I do, just because their similarities are only slightly off. Like a basilisk is a giant snake with dragon-like teeth, and a worm is just a dragon head with a snake-like type mouth.
So I always pictured worm as like there's something out there, I think it's called the blood worm. And it shoots out a proboscis that stretches and has like 4 teeth that are made of copper. Like the metal copper. Its teeth are made of that. And it'll bite, and that's how it like feeds, as those copper things inject their venom or whatever, and they suck blood basically. That's why it's the blood worm. But that's how I always pictured it, but like bigger. Like bigger. There's the most famous one I know of is one of my favorite cryptids too. It's called the Mongolian death worm. And they hang out in like the deserts and stuff like that, and they can shoot out electric current almost like an electric eel to paralyze, and they can spit acid to basically help disintegrate their food down before they consume it, because they
And of
only
course,
have
don't
teeth,
forget
they
if
don't
you
have
touch
hands.
it, you immediately die.
Oh yeah,
You're just dead. Yeah, you touch it, you are dead. But that's
like
what I
that Rick
like
and Morty
about
scene.
worms. Yeah, dude. Hey man, I wouldn't do that. Why? If you touch me, you'll die. There's no way that's gonna be possible. He's like, what happened to him? Like death. He died.
Dead.
What kind?
There was
What
no
kind of
sound,
death?
no noise, no nothing. Yeah,
Instantaneous.
it's
Yes,
called a
it's called the
deterrent.
deterrent. It's like, and that's exactly what I imagine touching a worm is, because worms, like I said, are usually poisonous, venomous, or paralyze something to just eat it.
Yeah.
And that's my biggest thing, and that's why I think the basilisk and worm are pretty damn close. Because even in terms of like its powers, it does have paralyzing venom, right? So you're like,
Right.
okay,
It's
well,
also
that's pretty much the same thing.
It's also interesting to note that this is the first dragon species or subclass or type or whatever you'd like to call it that's on our list that doesn't have scales necessarily. It's more just typically described as like a worm or like leather or, slimy sometimes, or in the basilisk case, I'm sure it was probably, it looked smoother, almost like seal skin.
Yeah, I do remember it's like they don't necessarily have scales, but it's kind of like a snake. Like a
Yeah.
snake, right? Very snaky, where like its scales are more compressed together, so it makes it sheen instead of
So
I
now,
guess like
so
an
now the
armor.
question: do worms shed? I would say yes.
I think I've read before that they do.
Yeah, I would say yes, just because most things that don't have legs or that typically grow like that tend to shed.
Well, and I'm thinking like I said, like the basilisk, like that is something that definitely does shed a
Oh
skin,
yeah.
and like I'm just gonna keep reiterating that they're just very similar. So for me, I'm like it just feels like they would be of the same kind of nature that way.
Right, and they are cool, and I do like them, but for me, personally, I would say they fall below Western. I would say they're somewhere in the bottom 3. I don't necessarily think they deserve to be at the bottom.
I say that I like them enough to put them at like an 8 for me. I think they're very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
But in terms of their actual abilities, you do have if you're on the ground or you're in the sky, you're safe. Like if you're in
Yeah.
the sky, they're not going to be able to get you. You know, they're the only dragon type on this list that literally has no flight or has never been seen in media with flight.
Right. It would be funny to see one jump.
Yeah, it just coils up. Makes a spring action.
But so we got Wyrms at 8 then.
I believe so.
All right. So that's 3 of them so far. We haven't touched on the drakes, the wyverns, the feathered dragons, anything like that yet.
What do you feel is best?
So I do think I think feathered dragons is something that we should kind of talk about on here, because again, these ones are ones that are featured a lot. They're a little different than the other ones as they have the feathers, but they also don't always breathe fire, and some were deities.
And that's the amphitheater you're talking about, right?
So the amphitheater had leathery like wings, but no legs. Feather dragons are more like I said, the ones that are deities, like Quetzalcoatl, and things like that. There's a couple others, but that's probably the one most people know. But in this world of dragons here, they have the Tibetan dragon. Has no wings, but it has feathers around its like back legs. And the Mexican amphitheater has feathery wings. So again, Quetzalcoatl was Aztec. The Mexican amphitheater has feathery wings, and those ones are both Southern American in origin or Spanish in origin. And so they have their own dragons there, and those ones are really interesting because they're not typically known for breathing fire, and I personally think that's because feathers are fucking flammable.
I would believe it.
But they are known for, similar to the Wyrms, either being able to shoot some kind of acid or foul-smelling liquid, or electricity. Quetzalcoatl was known as the feathery serpent god of thunder and thunderstorms. And he brought chaos, destruction, thunder and lightning, and so that's what they were typically associated with there, and to the point that some people, I guess it was a common folk tale down in some areas of South America. I don't personally know, this is just something I read, that the roar of thunder is a roar of a feathered dragon.
That would be nuts if that was true.
I mean, technically there's nothing that's been completely disproven it, I guess, right? No.
I guess not, but I do like the idea that the amphitheater is this like in various different cultures, even in like flowing into Egyptian cultures. And it's like, to me, I really like the feathered appearance. I think it makes it look more. Again, I really love when something looks mythical compared to scientific.
Right. And it's such a striking image. So for those looking to spell it, it's Quetzcoatl. Quetzalcoatl. I also know that occasionally, not every time, but occasionally, there's something known as the Ouroboros, which again, that's Egyptian, and that's a symbol of a serpent swallowing its own tail, but sometimes it is depicted with feathers.
Yeah, it's also the symbol of infinity. Don't forget that. Ouroboros is infinite, is what they say. So.
Right. Yeah. It says that the oldest surviving book of the afterlife. It says that Ouroboros coils around the corpse of the sun god Ra protectively. So it's basically infinity because it's the corpse of the sun is what it's encircling. So it's when the sun dies is when we die, basically.
Oh, I feel like that would be the case in most aspects. Yeah.
No, bro, I'm one of those guys that could take the sun and a kangaroo. No, just kidding.
At
No,
the same time.
Right. No, I definitely not, and I definitely couldn't. I've seen kangaroos. No thanks.
They just look like they want to fight me. I don't know.
They just look like they want to fight. Bro, I don't know. They got a contract with the arson bears. That's why there's no bears in Australia.
There's no bears in Australia. Dragons took them all over. I don't know. Where do you place these? I think this is definitely a higher tier, in my opinion.
I do like this one. My favorite feathered dragon I've ever seen was actually from Final Fantasy X. It's the first summon you ever get. It's called Valefor or Valifor.
Mm-hmm.
And that was such an iconic thing to me that the images has always been striking. Serpent-like head, usually a serpent-like body, or just wings, sometimes legs, but very rarely, and then feathers. And it's like you said. It's a mythical thing. I would say it's between Asian lung and Western. I would put this at 4 or 5. If not 2.
I think I
2
could
is
agree.
good.
I think I could agree. I think I could definitely agree with like a 4. I like them a lot, but I still am a huge fighter for our 3 spot.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's just so iconic.
And again, it just looks way more mythical in my opinion. And that's just what makes me that is in my opinion the best way to do these things is like because I feel like in terms of like creatures, the worm to me is something that just like could have been in nature and could be a beast that is real. Because we've had like the big ass snakes. I can't remember what they're titanoboas. Like those are real.
Yeah. Titanoboa was absolutely real and terrifying.
And that's one of those things where you're like, that easily could have been classified as a worm. So like that's a real thing that we've encountered. And like to me, I'm like, those ones are scary, yeah, but obviously it's like at the same time, I think the mythicalness of it is kind of like, it kind of just the ones that are just realistic to me are either one the most scary or the least scary, in my opinion.
Yeah.
In terms of like encountering.
Right. No, I would absolutely agree with that. The fact that like worms are things like Leviathan, which scared people, and things like that, and then feather dragons are either thundering bringers of chaos, or again, kind of like the Asian lung, it could be a good thing if a lot of farmland down there. You want rain, you want thunder. It helps your crops grow.
Mm-hmm.
So it's another one of those things where it's curious to see that difference. Also, typically the feather dragons, not typically depicted with horns, kind of like Wyrms. They don't typically have horns or antlers of any sort, which is kind of funny to me.
Barren.
Well, it's kind of funny to me that the things that you would think would want the horns, like the Wyrms or these feathered dragons, don't have them. Like, I guess the feathered dragons are flying, so they don't need them as much. But man, the fact that Wyrms don't have them seems like such a
wasted potential.
Yeah, for real though.
But personally, I think after that we have to go into the drakes. We can't just skip them for so long.
Yes. Yes, skip the drakes. This is the era of Drake hatred. Kendrick Lamar started it. No.
Hey, yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy.
But yeah, drakes are crazy. So they're the ones that typically have 4 legs, no wings, but don't fly.
Yeah, imagine a velociraptor, but it has just 4 legs instead. And that's pretty much a drake.
Right. Common. I don't necessarily know if I agree with this, but a typical depiction of a drake is like the Hydra from like Greek mythology, or Python also from Greek mythology. Because they didn't really fly, but they were almost reptilian in nature. They had the 4 legs. The Hydra sometimes is depicted with only 2 legs, and that's why I don't necessarily know if I agree.
Well, also the Hydra is what inspired King Ghidorah from
That's
Godzilla,
true too.
and I fucking
That's
love
true too.
King Ghidorah. He's one of my favorite Godzilla monsters.
Oh yeah, yeah. Ghidorah was awesome.
But I'm gonna straight up say this right off the bat, and I'm gonna say this no shame. Drakes are my least favorite types of dragons, and they are easily my 10 spot.
So I want to say 9 because, and I'll do it before we hit whatever our number 1 is gonna be. But I have one that I think when we get there, you're gonna be like, why does this exist? But you might disagree with me. I'm not sure. But I personally would say we at least put them at 9.
If you think there's something worse, and we get there and there's definitely something worse, I will eat my words. But my personal is definitely a 10. But let's stick with 9, because I think if I know what you're gonna talk about, then I would probably agree.
List subject to change. Now the question too is, are we keeping this all, like you said, realistic dragons are either top or bottom spot? By that, do you mean like Komodo dragons, or do you
That's
mean
what
just
I
realistic?
think of, is like it's pretty much a Komodo dragon, like down to a T, other than it can't spit the acid.
Yeah,
Komodo dragons have bacteria that is so deadly that it's considered
yeah,
venomous. And like,
yeah, because they eat dead shit.
yeah, and so the bacteria, you get bitten by that thing, even if you make it out, 9 times out of 10, they're just gonna cut off whatever piece that got bit because it's not worth it. It's gonna rot before they can do
Right.
anything. And so, like, to me, I'm like, that is just the depiction of a drake to me. I'm like, they never have fire. It is almost 90% always a venom. And again, it's something that we see in nature and could have just been a Komodo dragon, which that's what they call it. Has dragon in the name, but it's just one
Right.
of those things where it's like, it is straight up just what a Komodo is.
Yeah, and I do
And
think we put realistic, aka Komodo dragons, monitor lizards that are called that. I do think we can put that at 10, but there's one that is also realistic that I think deserves to be at either 5 or 2, personally. But I do think we should put I can put monitor lizard dragons basically at 10, because I do believe that's where they should go, just because the fictional ones are so much more mind-blowing and awe-inspiring.
yeah, they've inspired a lot more stories around them, and there's like, again, I think monitor lizards, the Komodo dragon, stuff like that, they're a real thing. There's no mythos to it at all. So I don't even think they
Yeah.
should go on, close to 1. So I
No,
definitely put them at 10, in my
yeah, they're
opinion.
at our 10. So now we got 2, 5, 7, and 1. There's one more that's in our subspecies that we haven't talked about, and then the one that I just mentioned that is realistic, that I believe personally belongs at 2 or 5, even though it's real.
Let's discuss that, boy, and see what's up.
All right, so there is a sea slug known as the Glaucus atlanticus, aka the blue sea dragon sea slug. And it is beautiful. But what is so amazing about it is this little sea slug, like tiny little guy, it eats Portuguese man-o-war. That's its desired prey. And it absorbs their toxin and it amplifies it, and it has little barbs in its frills that it can use that toxin to defend itself. It's one of the coolest creatures I have ever seen that I can't believe exists like on our world. Like when you think alien type creature, it's this. If you just type in blue sea dragon sea slug into a Google image or Glaucus atlanticus,
Have you
it's
ever
one of
seen
the
there's a whole PBS episode and like a bunch of other stuff on them. They're super cool, and plenty of people go to hold them, and
yeah,
that's
don't
where
do that.
people fuck up is don't touch them, okay? Don't touch things that could kill you.
Yeah. Blue ring octopuses too. Don't touch them.
Yeah, anything that's blue typically means danger, so don't actually. It might sound cool, but don't touch them.
Right.
I like this a lot. I've seen these before, and I like the implications they have as a kind of like, even if this wasn't a real being, which it is. I mean, this is a real thing that we see, and usually I don't care too much for the realness of it, but this is one of those exceptions I think I could make in terms of like, it's one of those things where
It's
it's
beautiful.
mystical enough to be like, this is something that like you could have written down in a book and it would have worked the same way as like an
Yeah, you
awesome.
could portray it as an
Yeah.
alien, and you'd be like, "Oh wow, yeah." Like,
All dragons are aliens, stated here on Delve Deeper. Just saying.
oh snap!
Just saying.
Stick
That's
around
with
for
me.
that theory.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna swing back to that. But I really like this one just because it has a lot of fantasy elements to it in a realistic
Yeah.
setting, and this is a real creature. I reiterate that. So even if I was gonna pull this and be like, I'm gonna make a D&D block, a stat block for this guy, I feel like I could,
Yep.
and it'd be kind of fantastical.
I did a One Piece themed TTRPG where I was a fish man, and the fish I chose to base it on was this, and that was when I first learned about it.
That's fucking awesome, dude. I love me some. The ocean is both the most magnificent and scary place next to the forest, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, it's gorgeous, it's beautiful, so many cool things come in and out of it. Like if you've ever had sea glass, if you've ever had sushi, you know what I mean? Like so many good things. But then if I can't touch and be above my belly button, then I'm not going any further. That's
Yeah,
That's
I'm good. I can do some of the ocean, like the reefs, where it's
Yeah.
pretty clear and I can see through it. But if it's murky, I ain't going in that shit. Fuck that.
Yeah.
I ain't doing that.
It's cool to look at, and I watch stuff about it, but I couldn't ever do it. And like even video games like Subnautica, no, I can't do it.
No, I don't even. I'll see a TikTok of that shit, and I'm like, you know what? I'm good. I don't need to see that. I'm done. All right.
Right?
Bye-bye.
And these dragons that we're talking about, these sea slugs, blue sea dragons, live there. So that's why I think they deserve to be at least 5. At least.
I don't want to put them at 2 myself because I think there is something that takes 2 for me.
For sure.
I just think there's... But I don't know, though.
We could put them at 7. I would settle for 7 because they're still above monitor lizards.
I think I'm good with a solid 5. I don't think they're terrible. Like 7, I think is like, if you're only one step above monitor lizard, you're not passing the bar by much. But this definitely could feel like it's like a fantasy type. It has like some, like I guarantee you, if it had some lore, it would be pretty cool. But
right.
I think for a realistic dragon, I do like it enough to put it onto 5.
All right. Sweet. So now I feel like before we get into the top 2, we should figure out 7, and I feel like that's going to come from our Wyverns.
Unfortunately, I think I agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah, they're cool. I mean, they're better than drakes. They're better than monitors. They're better than worms, but they're still not quite there. They're the ones that have 2 legs, usually back legs, and wings, and then that's it. I mean, they have a tail and a serpent-like head, but they got no horns.
Sometimes you'll see them
Sometimes.
depicted with that, like they're using their wings as their arms.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
see
almost
that a
like
lot.
when they have the little hands on like the tip, and they'll come walking out using those.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like bats.
Yeah. Yeah. Or what was it? Gargoyles. Sometimes on like the old Disney show, they had little hands on their wings. Sometimes they would use for stuff.
That was my favorite show as a child.
It's a great show. I loved the. Funny enough that drakes are so low, but I loved the gargoyle dog that didn't have wings. He was just so fun.
Yeah, but that one was like had personality.
Yeah, that was also one of the few Saturday morning cartoons where you just watch somebody shoot somebody. Like, they were not shy about guns in that show.
Yeah, but it was an edgy show for kids, and that's what I liked about it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was. Top tier, for sure. Absolutely.
The wyvern for me is just one of those things where, again, it looks way too close to like a dinosaur. Where it's just like, it could just been a dinosaur. And like, I know I said that about a lot of these, but it's true enough to the fact that I'm like, it just bugs me a little bit because I'm like, they're not like mythical, crazy beings. I mean, what is it like in Lord of the Rings? They're escaping me. There's the type of dragons that they have, like the fell beasts. They're technically wyverns.
Yeah.
Like they're cool, but like in terms of like, yeah, they can get up there in size, but it's just an uninteresting creature to me. Especially like a lot of them have like some of the dragon features, and sometimes they're shown with like these beaks and stuff, and I just don't care for it. Like I don't need my dragon to be looking like a chicken, you know.
And they're typically not as big as like normal dragons. Like
No, absolutely not.
The worms are usually depicted like 14 to 16 feet long. Western, sometimes longer than that. Western dragons around that same length or height. Drakes are typically between 8 to 10 feet, and wyverns are usually drake sized or sometimes a little larger because of the wings. But they're typically pretty small when you're thinking of large, intimidating dragons. Wyverns for me, typically don't get that big.
I just can't. I don't like them because it's like they don't usually depict them having like mystical abilities. Cool. They're just like they have a bite. You can bite you. It's like, does it have venom or poison or flame or ice breath or things like that? It's like, no, not usually. There's kind of big lizards, and I'm like, it's cool, but they don't have anything that's like. Besides the wings, I think the wings is what gives it to me a better score than like the monitor lizard. And yeah, like I feel like those two to me are just way too on the nose. And at least this one is like has wings and kind of like the horns and has the spikes sometimes, and they have the like just a little more design to them. And I think that's why I would put them in 7. Personally, I do like.
Yeah, I agree. That's where I got them marked.
What do we have left on our little dragon tier list here?
The top 2.
I will say this because I think it's a interesting one, and I really, really like it. Is I think 2 for me has got to go to the cockatrice.
I do really like that one too, but this brings up something I was going to ask earlier. So the cockatrice is something that I would put under the classification of sub-dragon species. And that's only because I believe it belongs in the same tier list as things like the dragon turtle.
That's fair. That's fair.
So two, I would say we'll put subspecies dragons because the cockatrice is crazy.
Yeah. I think that fits because it does have like a lot of different implications, like you're saying, like the dragon turtle. I do like the subspecies a ton, and I think they just have such fun fantasy elements to them, and the myth behind them, like the cockatrice, the like the dragon turtles, or like the dragon lions, super badass stories with them, and like they're so in depth with each different individual culture that they work with, and they have like these super awesome in depth knowledge behind them and stories and just different mythos around them that I think they deserve too, that I like them enough so.
Yeah, and like you said, there's not only does every culture have some species of dragon, almost every culture has subspecies dragons as well. Like there's dragon people in lots of cultures, there's dragon dogs, like we've said, dragon turtles, dragon lions, the cockatrice. Like we've said it 3 times. Explain for the people a cockatrice, what it looks like, and what its powers are, because this is insane.
So the cockatrice is a chicken-headed dragon. It's usually got a chicken head, multicolored feathers. It's got the kind of the traits and talons of like a raptor eagle. So it's got the large talons of a raptor eagle. It's got the head of a chicken. It's got the neck of a goose and the body of a hen is what it's stated, and the tail of a snake. So this thing is crazy looking, and it's got like the wings that it has are like bat-like. Very, very awesome looking creature. It's one of my most favorites just because of its uniqueness. It's just one of those things where it's like an amalgam between some of the beasts. And I know we talked about an amalgam beforehand and kind of placed it lower. This one to me just feels more fantastical and more like if you saw this as a knight, of course you would run. That thing's terrifying, you know, like that's something that's like if you saw that in the distance even it would probably trick you into thinking it's like, oh, it's a large bird or whatnot, and you're like, oh, I could go, take that and feed my family, and then you get close to it and you're like, it's cockatrice, and you're just fucked. You're done.
Right? Yep, done. Just
But
like, oh,
from what I'm aware, it also breathes fire. They like a regular dragon, so.
Yep, it breathes fire. It has supposedly venom in its claws that can cause paralysis. Also, it's the same venom that the snake tail bites with.
Yeah.
And it's also supposedly under those feathers has scales, which means it can't be pierced with normal stuff.
Yeah. Yeah,
so
and those scales are crazy.
It's a mess.
It's a beast, is what it is.
And like you said, it has bat wings too. So that's like another. It's those leathery wings almost that make it seem more like a dragon. Like we have feathered dragons at 4, but sometimes when you immediately think dragon, you don't think the feathered wings. You think those leathery or scaly like wings.
Yeah. And I'm gonna say this because I think this is the way to go, and you can tell me if I'm crazy. You can say, Joey, that is the dumbest motherfucking thing you've said all day. But I am gonna tell you my number one, and you tell me your number one. But I think the number one spot belongs to Hydras.
I am so glad that you said that because I tend to agree. Even though they're not you could have said they were subspecies, or like I said, drakes, but I didn't. I made it clear. I was like, I don't feel they fit that because of this, because I wanted them up higher. Hydras are so insane, from Magic the Gathering to Hercules to everything. Like, and there's a wide range of them.
Yeah. And like I said, King Ghidorah for me is what really takes the cake. The old monster Hydra in like Hercules, the animated one.
Yeah, when I watched that and that animation style switch
Beautiful.
specifically for that monster, I was like, this is an important moment. And I was a child, and I still was like, this is important. And that still, to this day, is something that I can recall, like, bright, clear as day.
Mm-hmm. And when I was a child, I remember that being the first iteration I ever came into with the Hydra. And I ended up playing a lot of video games that depicted the Hydra, such as like God of War in my later years. In the first game, the first thing you encounter in the game in the first game is you're on a ship and you fight the Hydra.
Yep,
which
I have
is awesome.
I have a close friend of mine that I play Magic the Gathering with all the time, and he has a Hydra deck, and it is one of the worst things to try and go against. It is so rough.
Yeah. And like I said, it's awesome.
They typically have multiple powers too. Sometimes they can spit acid or different breath. Sometimes they're depicted as having each head can do a different breath. One of the consistent things is decapitating one head, not enough.
Yeah, you can't decapitate its head. From what I'm aware, you have to actually cut out its heart.
Yeah. Yu-Gi-Oh had a Hydra, the 5-headed god dragon or whatever they called. That's what they called it, but it was a Hydra. Like, so I mean, it's in our media as well as dragons are. So I definitely give them the top one spot. It's something that's so strange, so missable, so out there. And if any dragon was an alien, I would definitely believe it's one that couldn't be decapitated.
Yeah, and I think they're such amazing, just on their own. They're so much fun to look at and see, and these things are like insane when it comes to their power level on like even a fantasy level. They are basically unkillable unless you know what creature you're fighting, which is, that to me brings such an ominous feeling from what I want to feel from a dragon. Like a cockatrice, you can shoot it down and you can kill it. It is something that is killable pretty much by any means, but like a Hydra is just one of those dragons where it's like, even in Lord of the Rings, you know, Smaug did get defeated. Stuff. You know, and there's different dragons that we know have been defeated by regular means. But the Hydra is one of those ones, even in Greek mythology, that this thing just is impossible. They're like, you see this thing, you run. You don't just like, oh, I'm gonna fight this thing. You know, you usually tend to be like, you try to make it out with your life, and that's what it is. And that's what I really like about Ghidorah as well in the Godzilla franchise. Is like, when he comes in, he is the essence of doom to the human race. Like, he is like the end all be all. This is what is going to end the world, and the only thing that can stop it is a monster of equal power, Godzilla. Right? So it's like, there's a notable fear of these Hydras, and even when it comes down to the smaller things, like it sounds dumb, but like to only kill it by taking out its heart, that implies you have to best it in combat somehow first.
Yeah.
You know, so like you are having a lot of things pile up for me on the Hydra, and plus, let's not even get into the worst variant of it in the world, the false Hydra in D&D.
False Hydra.
Disgusting.
Yeah,
the
gross.
Most horrific thing I've ever seen drawn or like depicted. If
you're a DM and you're using that on your players too, just tell them they made you mad. It's easier.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, it's disgusting.
It's bad. It's terrifying. It's terrible. It's if you ever played Ocarina of Time, picture those white things when you go as young kid Link with the hands everywhere, but they're also a Hydra. Isn't that fun? Are we having fun yet?
That's what I'm saying, man. It's like it's so crazy to me the amount of stuff that goes on that I think is just like gets overlooked.
Absolutely. Some of this we already covered, but we do have our tier list, and I want to read a little fact list before we go. But before that, I'm going to read the tier list as such from spot 10 to spot 1. Are you ready, buddy?
I am absolutely ready.
So at spot 10, we put the monitors, the lizards, the Komodo dragons, those type of things. They're just not doing it for us because they're basically smaller versions of number 9, which is drakes. Again, no wings, no flight, no fun powers really to speak of, just really a big ass lizards. So there's 9. Number 8 was Wyrms. Wyrms are fun, but Wyrms are not fun enough to beat anything else.
Yeah.
At 7, we have the Wyverns or the Wyverns, however you pronounce it. Those are the back legs, 2 wings, 2 legs. Not very threatening, not super intimidating, not as imposing as some of our others. Like at number 6, the Western Dragon. And that's the one from Dragonheart. That's Smaug from Lord of the Rings. That's Alduin from Skyrim. Those are the Western dragons. And while they are fierce and intimidating, all the other ones above this are just more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
At number 5, we have our only other real dragon to make this list, and that's the Blue Sea Dragon. I shouldn't say that. The only confirmed real creature that is a dragon on this list. Blue Sea Dragon, aka the Glaucus atlanticus sea slug. This thing is amazing. It's gorgeous. It eats the Portuguese man of war and uses its toxin against its prey. That's hilarious. But it's not as cool as our top 4, and at number 4 we have feathered dragons. These are the things like the Mexican amphitheater and the Quetzalcoatl and things like that. These are the ones that are known to bring storms and chaos, harbingers of thunder and lightning usually. And now we're hitting our top 3. At number 3, we have the Asian lung. This is the typical Asian dragon, the serpentine with the deer antlers or sometimes moose antlers, that is usually known to bring good luck or prosperity, and it's a good thing to see it. This dragon is portrayed in lots of media as well, such as like Kaido in One Piece, the dragon in Journey to the West, Shenron in Dragon Ball Z is the one you brought up earlier, Joey.
Yeah.
And those are all Asian lungs. And then in number 2, we have subspecies dragons. These include everything from the dragon turtle to the cockatrice. These are things that are dragons in either aspect or name or difficulty, but are not your typical dragon when you're thinking dragon, and that's why we put them so high. They're so unique, they're so vast, there's so many. And then,
Absolutely.
Number 1, King of the Dragons, the Hydras. And I agree with that list.
That's exactly what Ghidorah is recognized as, King Ghidorah.
That's right, King.
So,
got that crown.
And I think that's pretty much where I think the list for me on dragons goes. And I know that we were kind of just doing this Mythos file a little bit differently than normal, but I think I kind of want to resume this too. Like when we come back and circle back around to like the Greek and Roman gods, I kind of want to do the same thing because there's so many of them. I think that this tier listing kind of helps us like define each one by characteristics, kind of what they do, what their stories are, who they are, what they do, and then just like their basic overall look and how fantastical they are as beasts and mythology.
Right, absolutely. And before we head out, I just want to read 3 of these facts from this list. So this is the Dragons and Mythical Beasts live show that goes on and tours usually around the UK. And they have 7 unique dragon facts. We touched on some of them, but there's 3 that are very specific in here that I wanted to point out, and I think they're fun and it'll be a great way to wrap it all up. So the first one is, the best way to kill a dragon is with a lance. Don't know where that came from, but I mean, I can't really argue. I guess it has to be medieval knights. Yeah, Monster Hunter for sure. Obviously, if you use a lance, you can knock off more parts, guys. Oh,
you can shield yourself.
Right. And then like right after that is Saint Margaret of Antioch was swallowed by a dragon. Holy crap, that's insane. But it literally says too, it's like, however, his stomach rejected her and she was let out unharmed. So he ate Saint Margaret of Antioch and was like, oh, this chick ain't sitting right, and threw her up.
Look, it's making the cat noises. It's like,
Right.
oh god, not on the carpet.
And then this one I had to read twice, and I'll tell you why. But it says in Incan culture, dragons brought change. So the Incas who lived in Peru called dragons Amaru, and they believed they had two heads, one of a llama, one of a puma, and they had supernatural powers that symbolized great change or bringing of revolution. But when I read it, I thought they meant like pocket change. So I just pictured this dragon flying over this village, just like throwing quarters at people.
We just have like the Empire State Building fear of dropping a penny.
Right?
Thousands dead after dragon drops shillings on villagers' heads.
Yeah, that's what I pictured though when I read it. I was like, wait, he brings what? Like,
he brings pocket change.
Before I read it all. Take my pennies! Even dragons don't want pennies. But that's about all I have on dragons, and we have a great tier list going, so I think this was a really fun, fantastic episode. And speaking of dragons, we both play Dungeons and Dragons, and Joey, you have a show and a Patreon and a podcast dedicated to that, so what's all that about, buddy?
I actually do. If you guys look at my other channel over on Dastardly Easy DMing, there's a link in our description in our YouTube. You guys can go follow that. At the moment, we are currently exchanging everything and doing an overhaul to our system to give you guys a visual representation and give you a better show in general. So that's what we've been doing lately. But if you guys want to go check out one full season, and then we've got about 60 plus episodes that you guys can go listen to, each about an hour or 2 hours long, depending on the story. We talk about all the bad things that happen in D&D and other systems, and we try to go ahead and give you guys the best advice that we can to prevent such dastardly things. But that is a podcast that I host with my other co-host, Antonio, and that is one of my first podcasts ever, so if you guys ever want to go hear me talk and spew about dragons and dungeons and things, and the dark is too dark, then go ahead over there and see if you like it. If you do, feel free to subscribe there, and of course subscribe here to A Delve Deeper. If you are a long-time listener and you are a cave dweller like myself and you want to hide away from the subscriptions, if you subscribe, I would much appreciate it. It's really awesome when you guys do. It helps the channel grow, it helps us get out to more people, and of course it lets us produce more episodes of A Delve Deeper, which I'm always happy to do every single week.
Yes, I love doing this. It's brought me so much joy. It's so much fun. I love all of our delvers. I love when they support us here. Subscribing, like Joey said, would be super amazing. Likes, comments, any interaction, any engagement, we fully welcome it, encourage it, and hope it keeps rolling. And if you're looking for more of me, I'm not as big of a dragon as I am a wizard. So you can find me at Blizzard Wizard, that's BLZZRDWZZRD.com, as well as that handle on almost all social media except for Snapchat and X. And I'm more of a voices guy, but this is something I look forward to doing every week, something I love doing. I love hanging out with you, Joey. I love our delvers, and I love fucking dragons.
Dragons are absolutely wonderful, and I was very excited for this episode since it's something that has interested me in a long time. I've been into dragons for a long time, and of course I have been rolling for the dungeons and the dragons together, so as much as I love everything, I gotta say I'm out of things to say about them besides moi. I love dragons. I love you, delvers. Ooh. Yes, a little bit of a Valentine's gift for me. But I hope you guys really enjoy this episode. I'm looking forward to next week's episode, and that's gonna come out hopefully on Valentine. This one will be here on hopefully by Valentine's Day. So if it
Yes.
is, happy Valentine's Day, everyone. I hope you guys have a good one, or if it's not, hope you have a good one and you're not lonely, or maybe you go out and get chicken wings and that makes you feel better, because that's what I did for a lot of years. Go try it. It's really fun and it tastes good. But yeah, I just want to say thanks, everyone. Appreciate all the love and support we've been getting, and I look forward to getting all this together. And we can see you on hopefully when we get the Patreon up with more stuff coming in the next couple months. We'll update you guys as we continue to go forward. But thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Bye.